Hello, readers. Welcome back to reading class with me, Miss Taylor. Alrighty. So let's see. Are we ready to read? Do we have our textbook? Got my textbook here. You have your workbook. Oops, I forgot. Bookmark, finger, workbook, pencil. Check. All right, some things to remember. We're going to try to track with our finger. We're going to try to follow along, read each word carefully, pay attention to end marks. Some of our goals for reading, we're going to read with accuracy and expression. We're going to understand what's happening in the story. We're going to make connections to characters' feelings and also their actions. And we're going to enjoy the story. Alrighty. Reading is thinking. Look at all these things that are happening in our brains. We're making connections. We're visualizing. And we might be doing some more visualizing, and that is kind of a fancy word that means painting a picture in your mind. As we were looking at a map in the last lesson about how Henry and Tim were going from Big Trout Lake in Canada down to Michigan and then to Kentucky. And so we were shown a map in our textbook, but then I'm also kind of picturing that in my mind as we're reading and how they're flying down south. And then there was a really pretty picture in the textbook of like that landing, that little resting area where they stayed. And it's just a really pretty picture. So let's keep visualizing the journey that Tim and Old Henry are making. And we're asking questions, we're summarizing. A lot of times we summarize by thinking about what happened in the last story. Oh, yeah, that was when Henry was trying to, well, first of all, he tried to tell Tim how to get to the landing places, and that didn't work. And then he tried to draw him a map. And we kind of drew a map with the triangle shaped piece of land in the stream, and that didn't work. And so in the last story, Henry decided, I think I might have to go with him all the way because Tim really needs to go to a place in order for him to remember how to get there. But Henry also isn't sure that he's going to be able to make it because his wing is so sore. Okay. So that is summarizing, kind of thinking about what happened in the last story. Oh, yeah. And we try to say it in a few sentences because we can't really remember everything that we read. So when we kind of remember what mostly happened in that story or that lesson, that's summarizing. All right. So let's keep these things in mind as we read today. This is what our reading lesson kind of looks like. I'm going to go a little bit quickly through this because we've done this before. Okay, lesson number 8. So we have the sun heats the earth. Ooh, the sun just is coming out a little bit here. And a new plan. So our nonfiction section, our informational passage is about the sun heats the earth. And then a new plan. That's our fiction story about Old Henry and Tim. So I don't know about you, but I was just doing some predicting just then. I was like, ooh, a new plan. I think I have an idea what Henry's going to do. Alrighty, so the sun heats the earth. We are on page 30 in your textbook. If you would please follow along with me on page 30. All right, let's take a look at column number 1. So these are our word lists. These words have more than one syllable. The first syllable is underlined. So let's take a look at word 1. What's the first syllable? View. And the whole word? Viewer. Word 2, what's the first syllable? See. And the whole word? Season. Word 3, what's the first syllable? Hurt. And the whole word? Hurting. Word 4, first syllable? Cloud. And the whole word? Cloudy. And word 5, first syllable? Old. And the whole word? Older. Nice job. Let's read those the fast way. I'll go first and then you go. Ready? Fewer. Season. Hurting. Cloudy. Older. Nice job. And column 2. So numbers 1 through 3 tell about different places. Number 1, what place? Number 2, what place? Number 3, what place? And number 4, what word? All right, so let's try those the fast way. I'll read first and then you. Reedy Lake, Clark's Hill Lake, Jackson Lake, Shone. And I feel like sometimes number 2 is kind of a bit hard to say. Number 2 is Clark's Hill Lake. Can you say Clark's Hill Lake? Nice job. Alrighty, so let's go to part B. We have an information passage here. Give some facts about the sun heating the earth. Please follow along with me in your book. The sun heats the earth. You can figure out which parts of the earth are hot and which are cold if you look at how the light from the sun gets to the earth. The picture shows lines of heat that are going from the sun to the earth. Those lines are the same distance apart. So everybody touch the lines that are going from the sun to the earth. Are some of those lines closer together than other lines? No, they're all the same distance apart. Some of those lines are longer than other lines, but they're the same distance apart. So they're kind of the same distance apart, even though some of them are longer and shorter than others. But they're the same distance apart. They're each a little ways. Here's a rule about the lines of heat. Places on the earth that have more lines of heat are hotter than places that have fewer lines of heat. So that's an important rule. Places on the earth that have more lines of heat are hotter than places that have fewer lines of heat. Right. Places A, B, and C on the earth are the same size, but one of them is a very hot place and one of them is a very cold place. Everyone touch place A. It is the same size as place B or C. The hot place receives more lines of heat from the sun. So if you want to find out which place has more heat, you can count the number of lines from the sun that hit that place. Count the lines that hit place C. How many lines of how many lines of heat hit place C? You say 4? If another place on Earth had more lines of heat, would that place be hotter or colder than place C? It would be hotter. Count the lines of heat at place B. How many lines did you count? Should be 8. Or you can do it this way too. 8 lines of heat at place B. So, which place has more lines of heat? Place C or B? B. So which place is hotter? Place B, right? Count the lines of heat at place A. How many lines did you count? Should be 10. All right. So at place A, there are 10 lines of heat. So which place has the most lines of heat? Place A. And which place has the fewest lines of heat? Place C. So which place is the coldest? Place C. And which place is the hottest? Place A. Nice job. Remember, the sun heats the earth and the equator receives more heat than any other part of the earth. So everybody, where does the heat on the earth come from? The sun. And which part of the earth receives the most amount of heat? The equator. Nice job. Alrighty, let's go ahead and look at part C. This is our fiction story, A New Plan. Alrighty. A new plan. The next day's flight was very hard on old Henry. His wing was sore, and the next landing place was a little more than 300 miles south of the landing place in Michigan. 300 miles. It's going to fly 300 miles with a sore wing. Ouch. It would have made sense for the geese to travel only 200 miles and then spend the night at a new landing place. But geese don't always make sense. They always go to the same landing places. If those places are a little more than 300 miles apart, the geese fly a little more than 300 miles. So they have to fly 300 miles, even though Henry's wing is sore. So geese always do the same thing. They go to the same landing place. They go to the same destination. And by the end of their trip, they go to Crooked Lake in Florida. Every year they go to Crooked Lake in Florida. So that's kind of interesting. Even if his wing is sore, they don't really, say, well, no, let's just go 200 miles. They just always go what they've always done. All right, so 300 miles, that's a long way. If you went on the freeway at 60 miles an hour, you would have to drive for 5 hours without stopping to go 300 miles. So if you've ever been like a road trip and you're going in the car with your parents and you're like, are we there yet? Oh, mom and dad. Oh, excuse me. Oh, that's a real yawn. 5 hours in the car to go 300 miles. All right, let's keep reading. Tim and Old Henry reached the landing place by late afternoon. This landing place was between two lakes in Kentucky. One was large and one was small. Right, so now they are in which state? Kentucky. And what state were they in before? Michigan. Yep. So this landing place is between how many lakes? 2. Nice job. Let's keep reading. Something about the large lake didn't seem right to old Henry. There were some geese on the large lake, but they were too close to the shore. Henry's wing was so sore that he really wanted to land and rest. So he told himself, there's no problem down there, and he started to lead the way down to where the other geese were swimming. Tim flew up next to old Henry and said, I don't think we should land there. Why not? You told me never to land in a place that had only a few geese on the water. All right, let's see. So everybody, what was on the big lake? A few geese. And did Henry know better than to land on a lake when there were just a few geese? Yeah, he knew better, but why was he going to land there anyway? Yeah, his wing. Again, he's like, oh, I know we shouldn't, but I'm so tired of my wing. My wing is so sore. And so who's trying to stop him? Tim. Very nice. Kind of reminds me of, remember how old Henry protected Tim from the fox? And now it's kind of like Tim is protecting old Henry. Ooh, let's keep reading. Just then the geese heard a sound that was something like another goose calling, but old Henry knew that it was not the sound of a real goose. He said, You're right, Tim. There are hunters down there. Let's get out of here. The geese made a great turn and started to climb higher and higher into the sky. Just then there were loud, banging sounds. Hunters were shooting at Tim and old Henry, but they were too far away. Whew! You may have saved our lives, Henry said to Tim. You're a very smart young goose. All right. So, first they heard a sound that kind of sounded like another goose, but then they were like, I don't think that's the sound of a real goose. And then they heard those banging sounds. Hunters were shooting at them. Dear. But luckily, Tim and Henry were too far away. All right. Let's see. I wonder why Tim remembered about the fact about the geese, that you shouldn't land in a lake when there's only a few geese. He remembered that fact, but he can't really remember the landing places. Let's keep reading. The two geese found another landing place about 5 miles away. It was a field that had a small pond in the middle of it. The geese landed, took a nap, and then ate some seeds. Sounds nice. Old Henry wanted to go the rest of the way to Florida, but he knew that he could not travel as fast as flocks usually go. If Henry was to make it, he would have to fly one day and rest the next. He couldn't fly 2 days in a row. So let's see, how far was the landing place from where the hunters were? About 5 miles away. And what was Henry's new plan for helping Tim get to Florida? He was going to fly one day and then rest, and then fly another day and then rest, and fly another day and then rest. It's like he's doing it a little bit at a time, taking his time. Kind of reminds me about our poem Persevere. The man who travels a mile each day may go round the world at last. So it's kind of like, when we do just a little bit at a time, and pretty soon we end up having done a lot or made it to our destination or reached our goal, and then we can feel so proud of ourselves. But it usually works best if we take our time, we do a little bit and then we rest, we do a little bit more and then we rest. So I think that sounds like a very prudent plan. All right, let's see. When the sun was growing red in the west sky, the two geese were sitting near the pond. Tim said, "So where do we go tomorrow?" Henry told him the plan. "We're going to rest tomorrow, then we'll fly the next day." Tim said, "But I'm not tired. I'll be ready to fly tomorrow." "I won't be ready," Henry said. Tim looked at Henry for a long time. Then he said, "Well, you're in charge. Anything you want to do is fine with me." So the birds rested the next day. Late that afternoon, a large flock of more than 80 geese landed near the pond. The leader of the flock and 3 of the older geese came over and talked to Henry and Tim. The leader asked, "Where's the rest of your flock?" Old Henry explained where the rest of the flock was and why Tim hadn't gone with them. "So, how many geese are in this flock?" "More than 80. All right. So, old Henry kind of explains where the rest of the flock are. Maybe you can think about, if you were old Henry, what would you say to the leader of this other flock? Maybe you tell him, like, "Well, my name's old Henry and I'm getting pretty old. I'm 35 years old and I wasn't going to make it down to Florida, but then I met this young goose and his leg was hurt, so he didn't really learn how to fly. And I taught him how to fly, and then I told him how to get to the first landing place, but couldn't really understand it. So then I said, well, I'll go with you to the first 3 landing places. And then we did that. But, actually, after the first landing place, I decided that I would need to go with him. And then we just came up with a new plan that we're gonna fly one day and rest the next, and then fly another day and rest the next." So it's kind of telling them what's happening. The leader of the other flock said, "We're from one of the big lakes between Canada and the United States." Ooh, the big lakes between Canada and the United States. What are those big lakes called? Do you know? They're called the Great Lakes. Yeah, and we were talking earlier about Lake Superior, or actually in the last lesson. There's Lake Superior, and there's Minnesota, and there's one of the Great Lakes, but there are some more. Let's read about them. Well, actually, let's look at the map for a minute. So let's look at the map. Below the map is a key. So you can see that little picture down there, that's the key. Touch the letter A in the key. It shows the boundary line between the United States and Canada. Find that line on the map and trace it with your finger from one side of the map to the other. Kind of see that little red or pink dotted line? That shows the border between the United States and Canada. Ooh, and it goes kind of right through some of the Great Lakes. The leader of the other flock lives on one of those big lakes between Canada and the United States. They are called the Great Lakes. Letter B in the key shows the color of the Great Lakes on the map. So we have them in blue. Let's see. Count the Great Lakes and raise your hand when you know how many there are. Remember, the Great Lakes are just those big lakes between the United States and Canada. How many Great Lakes are there? 5. All right, so there's 5 Great Lakes. You can see that some of those lakes are over 100 miles from one end to the other. Let's keep reading. Tim said, I know those big lakes. We flew over one of them, didn't we, Henry? Yes, we did, Henry said. Then he asked the leader, Are you on your way to Florida? We are, the leader said. We go to Reedy Lake. That's wonderful, old Henry said. Tim is trying to go to Crooked Lake. Oh, the leader said. That's only a few miles from Reedy Lake. Old Henry said, How would it be if Tim went with your flock? You could drop him off at Crooked Lake. We could do that, the leader said. So now they have another option. Henry's like, oh, maybe Tim could fly with the new flock down to, well, they're going to Reedy Lake, but the leader said that Reedy Lake is just a few miles from Crooked Lake. And the leader seems to be like, that would be fine with me. Seems fine. Let's see. So I wonder if Tim goes with this other flock, what's Henry going to do? And go back. You probably wouldn't want to go back to Big Trout Lake in Canada because it's frozen right now. Do you think he'd just stay where he is? Maybe wait for his flock to come up? What do you think Tim is going to feel? Or how do you think Tim's going to feel about Henry's latest plan? Because they have gotten to know each other. They kind of have like a friendship now. I wonder if Tim is going to want to leave old Henry. I know if it were me, I might say, well, you're kind of like my buddy now. Kind of like having you around. We will find out next time. All right. So, would you please reread the story on your own? I'm going to answer some questions at the end of the story. And remember, with your questions at the end of the story, you don't need to write them down, but you do need to make sure that you know the answers. So you could just kind of read them to yourself and check your answers with the pictures that I have on the bottom of the assignment. So you can kind of check to make sure that you are understanding. And if you're not, if you're kind of getting confused, I would suggest you go back and do some rereading, finding the part in the story where the answer is. That's called finding the text evidence. So you could go back and look in your story. All right, and then you're going to finish your workbook, and you're going to send me some pictures of it, and then you're going to read for 20 more minutes sometime throughout the day. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will get back to you right away. Alrighty. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, readers. Bye.